Hi there, welcome to another episode of the Bonsai Stuff podcast. It's me, Scott Martin, as always, and geez, I love this time of year. I'll say it on almost every podcast, but I love autumn because it's a pretty time of year with our bonsai. We get to see lovely colours in the deciduous, which maybe haven't been looking so great when it comes to the end of summer, but now that this process of autumn has started for our trees, not only does it trigger this beauty, this magnificence in these trees, which to be honest, you don't get with almost every Australian native. And your pines and junipers, your conifers, they look pretty static around now. It is a nice time coming up for them. I think winter's my preferred time for them, but this is the time for me where deciduous get to really shine, and it's a really solid reason why I think your bonsai collection needs to be broad and diverse, because you get to experience so much more when you have that open-minded approach as to what bonsai should and shouldn't be in your collection. And I know there's certain parts around the country where having deciduous isn't possible. I get that. That's cool, but where I'm in Melbourne, this is starting to head towards a really, really beautiful time of the year. It's also a time where I get to do a lot of work on my trees and build their strength by fertilizing, by making sure that I'm doing the right thing for them, and that really pays dividends for me in coming years. Seriously, I don't mean to bang on about it, but it's really, fertilizing now is so important, and it's a reminder that we're just into a couple of weeks into the start of the autumn period, and if you haven't fertilized now, then you probably want to do something about it pretty soon. And this is the only reminder I'll give you throughout this podcast, but fertilizing now to the best of your ability, the best of what you can do in your environment. Doesn't need to be the same as what I do or one of the other bonsai network do. It's or what you see online. It's the best that you can possibly give your trees now, and any help you give them will, I guarantee you, will come back to you in spades. So it's nice. But anyway, the podcast, I'm going to talk about early autumn pruning and as well as autumn a little bit, just so you can understand what's happening with your trees. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about decision making, and in specific, or being very specific about it, is to talk about sort of branch selection and branch removal. But anyway, let's get in the podcast. So there's two growing periods for your bonsai. Making it very, very simple. I'm breaking this down to be as simple as possible. There's two growing periods for your bonsai throughout the year. There's spring, which is foliage growth. You'll see it. Flowers come out, foliage pushes. Then the second growing period for the year is the autumn period. Starts with always a little bit of foliage growth. Nothing anywhere near like what we get in spring. But it definitely is a period of time where it's a strength building time for your trees. And you'll find that at this time of the year, a bit happens that you don't necessarily get to see with your trees. And this is part of the reason why, because it is this growing period, there's theories out there that you can repot at this time of the year. It's definitely not something that I look to do, because it's a very short, narrow window where the trees are heading towards the dormancy period, and it's not like an extended growing period like spring is. So my preference is always to repot with the best possible chance of recovery and the tree taking steps forward and not being hindered by anything that I do to the tree. So repotting it, heading towards dormancy, the weather changes, tree suddenly goes dormant, you've got all these exposed cuts on the roots, then they're definitely prone to rot, and the tree won't stabilize as it should. So anyway, I don't think it's a time for repotting, but I definitely think it's a time where we can get involved. So just to, you'll know that autumn comes around, the daylight hours definitely getting shorter and shorter. There's more and more nighttime hours, less and less daytime hours, and the trees know they can pick up on that, and they know that that's the signal that something's about to happen. That the daylight hours getting shorter and shorter means that they're heading towards dormancy, so they need to do something to get through this dormant period that's coming up, which I think's like it's so cool that it's built into the trees to read daylight hours, and it's just they're an amazing thing. Trees, they never cease to amaze and astound me as to how advanced they are. Anyway, so the days get shorter, and naturally, as that happens too, well, your temperature starts to get a bit cooler as well, and that triggers the thing that we love. I suppose the thing that I love with deciduous is the color change. The trees stop using the leaves to produce food, and the chlorophyll starts to break down in the leaf, and that's what starts giving them the more yellow, orange, red appearance in color. And there are places around Victoria that when autumn hits, you head up to the colder climates, up in the hills. Mount Macedon's a beautiful place that I can think of that you head up to, and you can see some incredible colour. Or some of the regional areas where it gets real exposure away from the warmer air towards the coast, and get inland a little bit more, and you get that dry, crisp, cold air at night, and that's when the leaf colour tends to explode and just becomes absolutely bloody beautiful. And for our bonsai, it's important to note that sort of environment, that it's a drier period, so there's normally a bit less rainfall. So when it's drier, the colour tends to pop out a little bit more, and it's a methodology that you can use with your bonsai. You've got to be very careful about it because you don't want to kill your tree by not watering it. But it's definitely, as we get towards a little bit deeper into the autumn period, that's a technique you can use to boost the colour of your leaves. But anyway, so one of the main things that I do for strength building at this time of the year is fertilising. And I talked earlier about being the last reminder for fertilising and all that sort of stuff. It is one of the most important things that I think I do now. And the preparation for me is key, making sure that I've got the components that I'm going to use for my fertilising, tea bags, whatever it is, the approach that you're going to use. And I just want to say that you can use whatever the best method is for you and for your trees. And while it might not be the optimum, doing something at any point with your bonsais is far better than leaving them to do it on their own. They will take the nutrients from the leaves as they'll get whatever they can out of the tree, out of the leaves before falling. But I don't know. I wouldn't rely on that when it comes to trees in pots. In the ground, it's a very different scenario. They can get as many resources as they want by pushing out roots and searching and hunting. Maybe not always, but in most cases they can get exactly what they need. And the soil can be very nutrient rich from decomposing leaves or whatever it is where they get them. So I wouldn't rely solely on your bonsai to get what it needs from the soil, especially when you break down the soil components that most of us use. I look at what I use, and there's next to no nutrients in there. So it's 100% relying on me to do my job as the caretaker to make sure that I'm giving the tree what they need. So anyway, as part of forgetting fertilizing further now, I get a bit carried away when I start talking about fertilizing on my trees, because I think it's probably one of the difference between most bonsai and great bonsai is strength building, because the strength of the tree gives you opportunity to develop and design and grow branches and back bud and all that sort of thing. And that strength comes from you doing your job to make sure that the tree is as strong as possible. And there's a heap of things that have to happen. It's not just one thing, but fertilizing for me is one of the easiest things that we can do. It's the most simple, and I'm time poor. Like, don't listen to this and go, yeah, but you do bonsai full time. Yeah, I do, but I haven't always done it. But I've always focused on the strength of my trees, and I've always worked out what's the best thing that I can possibly do for my trees to make them as strong as I possibly can. And that's where, without a word of a lie, that's where this tea bag fertilizing method came from. I saw it working in Japan in the nursery, gathered information about how and why, and applied it to my trees in my yard in a smaller environment at that time. Saw the results and was amazed. But it's not just the fertilizing. You've got to have a really strong root system. Again, here's Scott yabbering on about the roots on your bonsai. Yeah, we know they're important. No, but it's true. If you've got a really crappy root system, you can put 14 ton of fertilizer on that tree and it won't do anything. May do more damage than good. But having a really strong root system means that, again, your watering's easy. It means that your fertilizing's really effective, and it means that we can keep taking steps forward with our trees. So anyway, I've got to stop talking about fertilizing, because my notes in my podcast book start reminding me to talk to you about early autumn pruning. That's nothing to do with fertilizing. Anyway, I get off on these tangents. So now's a really good time, because it is a healing time for your tree, for your bonsai. So while they are going to be reabsorbing the nutrients from the leaves, and you want to give the tree every opportunity to do that, of course, pruning can be done, maybe a little bit later in autumn as well. But I find with a lot of my trees, especially, if it's a tree that's going to be shown, or if it's a really high end tree, or I don't know, if it's something that I want to have look as pretty for as long as I possibly can, then I'll leave the pruning a little bit longer for it. But understanding that during this window that we have called autumn or fall, you've got an opportunity to prune your trees, have them heal from the process that you've just done on them, and then go to dormancy. All right. So the longer you leave the pruning of your trees in autumn, the less time they've got for healing, and the closer they get towards dormancy. So you've got to balance things out. There's got to be that sweet spot of complete satisfaction with color of your trees, but also working on the structure of the trees to improve it. Have the tree go into dormancy fully prepared, fully healed, so there's no open wounds, there's no leaking sap for your trees, and they go to dormancy, go to sleep, and then come out spring the other end happier, stronger, healthier than what they went into the dormancy period. So I like to sort of start working my way through the trees in this earlier part of autumn to get the pruning done that you're going to get done. It's a time that I look to make, semi-large cuts on my trees. I wouldn't do anything major like, trunk chops or anything like that. My preference for that is to do that right now near the end of the winter period, coming in towards spring, to get that healing done, which sort of works for me and my tree. So pruning things now allows me to make sure that I'm doing the right thing by the tree, as opposed to doing the right thing by me, so they look great and I get the benefit of them, but the tree suddenly takes a step backwards because I maybe haven't done the right thing by the tree. So it's a personal thing. It's a you decision you've got to make at this time of the year, but it's definitely got to be something that you consider, and good structure is good bonsai. Go back to right at the start of this podcast and my whole approach to anything to do with bonsai, and I believe it to my core that working on the structure of your tree over what it looks like, or what someone else thinks of my tree, is far more important. So I will always look to do the pruning at and make sure that as you know, I said, the trees are going to be getting what they need, the nutrients reabsorbed from the leaves before they fall. But I know that I'm pretty heavy with my fertilizer as well, so I'm going to be offering what more than what the tree needs or what it's going to get from the leaf mass that it's going to start pulling nutrients from, so I can offset that loss in nutrient uptake from the leaf mass by my fertilizing regime. So I find that it works really well for me, and I'm just putting it out there that maybe it's something that you might not necessarily have to do now, but it's definitely something that's got to be on the radar this autumn prune on your trees that you look at. Take black pines out of it now, and all your pines. It's not time to do the work on any of your pines just yet. Consider, months like May and June are my big times for working on my pines. So don't put them into this category. But if you've got deciduous in your collection, then it's really a good time to start thinking about over the next, let's call it month and a half, to do the prune. And don't leave it too late. Don't leave it into the May period, because you'll find that the trees may be dropping leaves. And I've been through that myself, where I pay the price for pruning things a little bit too late, and I don't get the results that I want. So I find that considering it a little bit earlier than too late is a positive thing. So hopefully that helps explain a little bit about autumn. I apologise for the fertilising thing, but it's really important, and also to have a look at your pruning of your trees before they get to the dormancy period. I would never recommend pruning deciduous trees during the dormancy period. It's nice and easy to see your tree, nice and easy to see the structure. It's great to wire them then as well, but I find that damage that you do, that breaking, that tearing, that cracking, that whatever it is, I find that is going to become an issue for you during that dormancy period, when the tree can't heal itself and you've got some really extremes in cold weather. So it's not the ideal for me. I try and work within the perfect parameters of what's best for the tree, and I just have to make my schedule work around that. It's pure and simple, But when it comes to fertilizing, you do the best that you possibly can, but you understand that there are consequences sometimes to not necessarily doing things at the correct time of the year. And this time of the year, early autumn pruning is a great thing to tick off your list and make sure you get it knocked away before dormancy. So it goes without saying, it's pretty obvious that one of the best features of bonsai are the branches. I know, stupid, right? But getting to that point with your bonsai, especially, well, sort of at any time, but when you're working with new stock, raw stock, when you're fresh to the game, sometimes when you get a little bit stuck, that decision-making process, to cut or not to cut is bloody, it's tough. It's hard. It's not easy. And I was having this conversation with somebody just the other day when I was working with them, and he said to me, you know what? He got told when he'd started bonsai a very long time ago, and he was told that if you've got a difficult branch and you look at it and you're not sure what to do with it, just cut it off. Then you don't have any more difficult branches. Might create other problems, but you definitely don't have that difficult branch anymore. And that approach, it's not what don't do it. I think it's just tongue in cheek. But I wanted to go through a bit of branch selection and how you can get things to a point where you've got a magnificent bonsai at the other end of it. But it's a process that you've got to go through. And it's really hard with branch removal. You can sort of get stuck on things, and you can be paralyzed and not make a decision and just look at it year on year on year, and things don't take that step forward because you're not sure of what to do. And it's hard because with your you can't think about now. You've got to think about the future, and not the branch that you're working with now might be a bud off the trunk. It might just be a stick with nothing further. It's just the primary branch, which is as thin as a pencil. It might have nothing, no structure to it whatsoever. But you've got to have that vision in your head of, hey, this is what it could be, or this is what I think it's going to become, and it's going to take this amount of room, and it's going to spread like this, and it's going to go from being, 2 centimeters long to being 20 centimeters long at some point in the future. When it gets there, it's irrelevant, but it's that future vision that I get can be really hard to work with at times, and sometimes sitting there and just letting everything grow and extend, it's good, but it's bad because you never really take that step forward with your trees, and you can, like I said, this paralysis. I'm here to encourage you to take baby steps. So what you can do is look at taking partial steps now, with the thought in mind that your selection process is only partially done. So when you're looking at that raw piece of material, a trick that I use, or not a trick, it's a guide that I use for it, is to look at the height of the tree that I want to finish at, whatever it is, 30, 40 centimeters, whatever it is. And then from that point down, I start thinking to myself, okay, well, if, I want some kind of mathematics here. How far apart should the branches be? What's a good thing to work on? Like, how many branches should this tree have? I believe you should always start with more branches than what you're going to need, because stripping things back too far is going to make it really difficult in the future. You're going to be stuck with a certain design. So, at a 40 centimeter high tree, you might say, okay, every sort of 3 centimeters, or 2.5 to 3 centimeters, thereabouts, roughly, I'm going to keep a branch. And it might not necessarily be a branch at this stage. It might be a bud, but that's the rough rule of thumb that I'll use. I'll look at the height of the tree and go, okay, well, if I get my spacing to be whatever it is, 2 centimeters, 5 centimeters, whatever it is, depending on the size of the tree. But then I'll work my way down and I'll go, okay, so not only do I want them to be, let's say 3 centimeters apart. I'm just using that as a guide. Don't get your ruler out or anything like that. I'm trying to give you some kind of scale. But let's say it's 3 centimeters, and then I'll go, okay, so I don't want, another consideration is I don't want branches directly on top of each other. So if I've chosen a branch at point A, then the next branch, I go down that 3 centimeters or whatever it is. It's got to move. It's got to rotate around the trunk a little bit. It doesn't necessarily have to be left and right. It's anywhere around that trunk, and it doesn't necessarily need to go, right, back, left, or anything like that. It can be, right to left to semi-front to maybe a little bit around the back on the left side, whatever it is. But just, I'm looking for branches that are going to be evenly spaced out, pretty much, not exact, but pretty much, as a guide to help you make some decisions with your tree. Look for that spacing distance between the branches. Try and get them so they move around the tree, so that the tree's fully covered, because you may not necessarily have chosen the front of the tree at this point. You can just be doing this clean out because you can't see the forest for the trees, because there's just shrubbery everywhere. So this equidistant, if you're lucky enough to have branches at all those different points, sometimes you don't, but if you do, then using that even spacing right down the whole trunk allows you then to let things happen, like let things grow. Step one is, okay, cool, I'm going to clean this out a little bit, going to pick some branches. Then as your design evolves, as more happens with your tree, as things start to grow, then you can get in there and go, well, now they're way too bloody close. Like, especially down lower on the trunk, I want, I've got this significant branch that I want some space around. Like, you'll learn about spacing and negative space and draw of certain branches at different points, and you'll go, those branches are all just too close to each other and they're actually suffocating. This branch isn't getting enough light and air, and it's a really nice branch, but it's the one that's just around the corner from it is taking away too much. So I need to make some more space. All right, you cut that off. So your branch selection process for any of your trees, that decision making, the tough part about having bonsai, especially when you're developing them, it doesn't need to happen all in one hit. It can happen definitely over time, but it's your mindset that when you do it, you know that there's more to do. No, that's the important part, to make sure that you know that when you put down your scissors after that first work through of the tree, to go, that's just step one. All right, so you know that next time that comes onto the bench in 3, 6, 12 months, whatever it is, I've got more to do with that tree. And then the pressure comes off you, and the pressure comes off the tree, because the tree gets a bit more light and air. Those buds that are in there that you've said, okay, this would be really nice if this branch grew in this spot, that then gets a real significant chance to do what it's going to do and push out and show you what it can do. And then next time it comes out, you can go, actually, that's really nice, but that one, I don't need that anymore, because I can see, my future bonsai vision for this tree is going to have this design component where I'm going to then move that branch across. I'm going to bend the trunk a little bit more. It's a process. It's an evolution, and over time, you can remove a little bit more, and take the pressure off yourself. I use this with people that I work with all the time. I like to keep my options open. I like insurance policies when it comes to branches and to buds, because if you put all your eggs into one bud, if you say this is going to be my future branch, this is really, really important, and without this branch, this design fails. Like, I'm going to be so disappointed. The tree's not going to be anywhere near as good as what it could have been. Let me tell you, you don't want that sort of pressure on the tree, and you don't want that sort of pressure on that one little bud, and you want that pressure on yourself. I would always look at it and say, well, a branch in this area is really important. Keep 2 or 3 options, maybe even 4. Let them grow around that area. I know, we talk about bar branching and swelling of the trunk and the damage that can be done with reverse taper and blah blah blah. That's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen overnight, I promise you. So keeping those options open for yourself, and waiting to see how things develop, and then maybe you've kept 4 there. Next time you work on it, go, actually, they're starting to grow really well, but now I'm going to refine that back a little bit. I'm going to come back to these 2 or these 3, because still not exactly sure which one it's going to be, but any of these would work great. Cut one off. Then next time you're back again. So each time you're making these micro decisions, which will lead to the completion of your bonsai butterfly. It doesn't has to happen overnight. Like, it's the process. It's the journey. I love it. This is the part that excites me most, because you sometimes watch videos, or you see photos, or you hear stories, or you go to a show and you see a demo, and you think, oh God, they can do all that in a couple of hours. God, I can't even get my scissors out of my tool roll in the same time it takes them to make those decisions. You don't have to have that kind of pressure. You don't have to be at that point. And I guarantee you that I do those demos. I make those decisions, but for me, I really enjoy this evolutionary process, and for me, it makes a far stronger and a far better bonsai doing it over time, and taking that pressure off myself to say, you've got to get this done, and you've got 20 minutes, go. Make those tough decisions, because you'll flounder and you'll dither, and I'm not sure. And then it becomes a stress where you do nothing. You become paralyzed. Like I was saying earlier, you're so nervous to make a decision that nothing happens. Whereas if you take that pressure off yourself and say, I don't have to do very much at all. I've got to just cut a few things off, leave my options wide open. Doesn't need to be complete. Doesn't need to be perfect. Then you can enjoy the process. You can enjoy the ride, which is what bonsai is. So just keep your options open, keep moving forward, try and get that nice distancing, try and get that nice spacing, and every time you work on the tree, make a few decisions. And over time, I guarantee you, don't make no decisions. Like I'm not encouraging you just to look at the tree and go, too tough, I'll do it next time. I'm encouraging you to say, okay, things have really taken, there might be 40 branches on the tree. It's too many. Get it down to 35. And then next time, get it from 35 down to 30. And then get it down from 30 down to 25, whatever it is. But that evolution, as these branches develop, it'll become far more natural for you. And your experience level will be going up as well. Like if you are fresh to bonsai, these things do get easier. And if you're listening to this as an experienced bonsai artist or a practitioner or whatever you want to call yourself, then you will know that this is an evolution that you go through too. As someone with some branch cutters, you'll know the paralysis. You'll know that fear. You'll know the feeling of making a wrong decision. You'll know the consequences of doing that. So this process, this evolutionary process, it slows things down a little bit for you. Keep some insurance policies up your sleeve. Make sure you got some backup buds and branches around the place. Don't sweat the small stuff like reverse taper and swelling around those areas, because the tree is going to be coming across the bench again in a relatively short period of time. And enjoy it. I think that's the best advice I can give you. But I reckon that advice, if you've got a difficult branch, just cut it off. Then you don't have a difficult branch anymore. I thought that was funny, so I thought I'd share. This really is a good time to spend with your bonsai. I think it's a really important time to get out there and maybe see what's happening, see the changes, really get in there and have a look at them. And different trees do different things at different times. I know some of my yard trees have changed colour, weeks and weeks ago. The change first happened. Got a bit dry, got a bit hot, but it wasn't that we had a massive dip in temperature. A little bit overnight. There's a few chilly nights, but nothing drastic. But it's that things were a bit drier around the yard, and we hadn't had any rain for a little while. So the trees have turned, especially on the tips, especially those that are higher and more exposed to the elements. They definitely have changed. And it's also time to consider looking for pests as well. It's definitely something that's going to be happening with that new growth that we get at the start of this period, the autumn period. You'll find that they will be back with a vengeance prior to things falling off trees. So just keep an eye out for those rotten pests called possums as well, because they will smash your trees. Anyway, it's a lovely time. Make sure that you are fertilising, please, and get on top of the maintenance of your trees. Think about that decision-making process. If you do get stuck, it might be a little trick that will help you. And most of all, just enjoy it. Enjoy the process. Enjoy the ride. Don't be stressed by it. Bonsai is not about increasing the blood pressure. It's about helping us in more ways than one. And bonsai lovers are beautiful people. Thanks for listening in. Love you all. And until next time, happy bonsai.